is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Excellencies, it is clear that globally we are entering very turbulent times. For an example, the very country to whom our people were taken as slaves during the transatlantic slave trade have now decided to ban refugees from some of our countries. What do we do about this? Indeed, this is one of the greatest challenges and test to our unity and solidarity.
Now, one of the greatest challenges to our solidarity. The U.S. travel ban on 7 Muslim-majority countries has drawn criticism from around the world. And with 3 African nations making Donald Trump's infamous list, leaders and citizens from across the continent are still trying to brace themselves for the potential repercussions. While citizens of Libya, Sudan and Somalia, for the next 90 days at least, will not be allowed to travel to the United States, the U.S. president's move has sparked renewed global concern around increasing American Islamophobia and the implications this could have on global peace and security. So as the outgoing AUC chair asked this week, what do we do about this? And can Africa come together in solidarity to respond to Trump's Muslim ban? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Well, the Trump administration is standing firm over its ban on immigration from 7 countries, despite court rulings and mass protests against it. In a statement, President Trump said visas would once again be issued once the most secure policies were in place and denied it was a Muslim ban. And now to help make sense of these actions and their implications for the continent, I have expert guests standing by. In Mogadishu, Abdi Hakim Ainte, he's a fellow at the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation. In Kampala, political scientist Frederick Galuba Mutebi. And with me in Nairobi is Dr. Mustafa Ali. He's an expert in conflict transformation and prevention. Welcome to Talk Africa, and thank you all for joining us here on the program. Abdi Hakim Ainte, I'll start off with you in Mogadishu, but all of you first, I want to establish your thoughts on exactly what you think this means for the 3 African countries involved. Abdi Hakim Ainte, what does it mean exactly? What does it involve for Somalia?
I think this is actually, it comes actually on the back door of when there are a lot of Somalis, especially a lot of Somali refugees are stuck in Nairobi for over 2 or 3 decades waiting to be resettled and relocated in the United States and to reunion with their families. So this will immediately have a quick impact and implication for those refugees. But broadly, it will have also other security implications that this could be used as a propaganda tool for Al-Shabaab and other Islamic terrorist organizations that they could use as a platform in which they can say, look, this is the biggest country in the world that is deliberately targeting and profiling Muslim community, and now they are now targeted. So it will have also, another implication on the security side, but also the human cost of it. I mean, imagine those millions of Somalis who are stuck in a makeshift camps in Kampala and in Uganda and Yemen and in Kenya, all of them waiting to be reunited and relocated with their families. So it will have a huge consequence for those refugees.
Let me get the view here from Kampala, Mr. Galuba Mutebi here. Your thoughts, though, will this be an effective way of stopping terrorism? What exactly do you make of all this?
Personally, I think that this is still early days, because if the President of the United States has said that, look, he's going to stop this immigration from these countries for the next 90 days until proper policies and regulations have been put in place, I would personally give him the benefit of the doubt and see where this is going. Because I think the starting point should be that every country or every government has the right to determine who enters their country. And I think that we should acknowledge that in the case of the United States. It's unfortunate that he has picked on a number of countries, but there are reasons why they have been picked on. With particular reference to Somalia, I think that in this region we all know Somalia is not a normal country. And I think that President Trump, by stopping immigration from Somalia for now, would not be so different from the way the Kenya government reacted when bombs were being thrown or exploded in Nairobi and other places, when they were the way they were reacting to people of Somali descent.
I do want to get Mustafa's view here. Are you going to give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt in this case?
No, I cannot give him the benefit of the doubt. First of all, it is puzzling. It's a puzzling policy. Trump has already, issued this executive order to countries that have not attacked America. Those terrorists that have been attacking America came from Saudi Arabia, they came from UAE, they came from Pakistan. The ones who attempted to attack America came from Nigeria. These countries, the order is not, affecting these countries.
So why didn't he touch on those countries?
Because the reasons are other than stopping terrorism. He is just using, this is just a red herring. And this is much, this kind of policy is appointed to a much deeper, sinister things that are yet to come.
Right, we will continue with this discussion in just a moment. But first, the Arab League has also responded to Donald Trump's temporary ban. Secretary General of the League, Ahmed Abu El Gate, says he's deeply concerned about the restrictions. Let's hear from Adil Mahroui.
After several days of silence, the League of Arab States has spoken out, severely criticizing U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration ban. 6 of the 7 affected countries by the executive order are Arab League states. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abu El-Gheit has released a statement saying he's deeply concerned. He maintains Trump's decision could be a violation of international law, particularly the 1951 UNHCR Convention, considered the foundation of refugees' rights. Abu El-Gheit has warned that families could be torn apart under the ban and that the harmony between Arab and American societies would likely be disrupted. The Pan-Arab Organization is also concerned that the embargo discriminates between Muslims and Christians. The Secretary General insists there is no security justification for the ban and argues that a country with the capabilities and resources of the United States should be accepting more rather than fewer refugees. And even if the ban is temporary, Abu El-Gheit has warned that the impact will be widespread. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, from the Arab League headquarters in Cairo.
And we continue our discussion now. My expert guests are still standing by. Dr. Mustafa, though, Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir also called this a negative message, sending out a negative message. You're also alluding to a sinister motive. Clarify that for us.
Yeah, if Trump was and the Republicans or the extremists within the inner circle of the Trump administration, if they really wanted to address extremism and terrorism, then they will, through immigration, then they would have targeted those countries that have produced the most extremist terrorists that are targeting America, or all countries that have produced extremists and terrorists that are targeting America. But they are just targeting a fragile or weak states which themselves have been destroyed by terrorists. And I therefore think that Trump is just testing the waters. His campaign rhetoric was that no Muslim should go to the United States of America. And now, because he cannot legally state or issue an executive order that no Muslim should go to the United States of America, and therefore he should target some countries that are Muslim majority and still achieve the same aims and objectives that he wanted or would have wished to achieve.
Kuluba Mutebi, though Donald Trump is targeting a softer target, not looking at countries such as Pakistan, such as Saudi Arabia. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is true. He's obviously started off with weak states, but I personally don't buy the argument that somehow he's targeting Muslims as such, because as we started off, it was mentioned that he hasn't targeted Saudi Arabia. I haven't heard him mention Indonesia, which is taken as the largest Muslim country in the world. He hasn't targeted Pakistan, as you have pointed out. I haven't heard him target Kuwait. So I don't see this as a target as targeting Muslims. He's targeting weak states. He will not achieve the objective that he set out to achieve, which was to block Muslims from going to the United States. And as we have seen, there's a great deal of protest in the United States. So chances that he's going to come under pressure from even within his own country are very high, and that within no time this is going to be reversed. Now, when I say that I'd rather give him the benefit of the doubt, it's because I personally would rather understand the details of what this story exactly is. And I think that the hysteria that is being whipped up across the world is going to prevent us from actually understanding what the issues are.
Abdi Hakim, let me get your thoughts here on that. Do you feel, though, as a Somali, that that your country has been and your people have been unfairly targeted as soft targets in this case?
I think what we need to understand here is that during his campaign, Donald Trump visited the state of Minneapolis, Minnesota, predominantly a Somali state in the United States, and he openly said that the Somalis are harboring terrorists. They are harboring all of these radical movements in the state. I mean, he said that in his campaign, and he said in a state that is predominantly lived Somali community. So I think, I mean, he is really fulfilling his campaign promise in the wake of a global tension between Muslim and other religions. So I think Donald Trump is really playing in the hands of extremist organizations, and also is playing in religion test with politics. So it's very clear, and I really don't understand what my other colleagues in Uganda said, that we should give the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I don't understand what does it mean. I mean, the guy campaigned this, that he will target these communities when he was conducting his campaign, and now he's in the Oval Office and executing what he said. So let's call this for what it is. This is a Muslim ban deliberately targeted to weaken and target societies that are already fragile and very weak.
Right. Let me put this, though, to Dr. Mustafa, because I did notice that you were smiling then. If this is a case of making America safe again, is this an effective way of controlling terrorism?
No, it cannot be even about making America safe. The vast majority of Americans are killed because of gang violence and organized crime in the inner cities of Chicago, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, in New York, and many other cities. The number of Americans that are killed by terrorists, last year, the year before, is hardly 10 or 20. Yet close to 30,000 are murdered every year by gang violence, through gang violence in the United States of America. But coming back to what Mutebi is talking about, Mutebi is a very optimistic person, and I love his optimism. This guy, Trump, has started picking fights with everybody. He started with the Mexicans. And, he told of the Mexicans, they're going to build a wall, and the Mexicans are going to pay for the wall. Now he is targeting Muslims because that's what he said during his election campaign. Shortly, Trump is going to target Africans, and he's going to target Asians. He's going to target everybody. We need to understand the state we are in today. We are dealing with two types of extremisms. Right. Two types of extremisms, Beatrice, here. One is the informal, fringe, marginalized, non-state-based kind of extremism that has been carried out in the name of Islam by groups like Al-Shabaab, ISIS, and the others, and the kind of extremism that we are seeing today that is carried out by state-based, formal governments like that of Trump. And this kind of extremism is what is now confronting the world today. All right,
we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we'll continue with our discussion and have more insights into Donald Trump's Muslim ban and its implications for Africa. To stay with us.
Here is a man representing a country which never was our colonizer. He is doing to us what we expected those who colonized us yesterday to do.
It's about moving the African agenda forward together with the Chinese in a win-win situation.
I think this is now elevating the partnership that China has with Africa to another level.
We are saying to China, thank you very much for China's understanding of Africa's difficulties and challenges, as it has always done. We are thankful that the Chinese leadership and the people of China are prepared to be with us, to pull with us under these kind of circumstances.
Countries have the right, even the obligation, to responsibly manage their borders to avoid infiltration by members of terrorist organizations. This cannot be based on any form of discrimination related to religion, ethnicity, or nationality, because it is against the fundamental principles and values on which our societies are based, and because it triggers widespread anxiety and anger that may facilitate the propaganda of the very terrorist organizations we all want to fight against. Refugees fleeing conflict and persecution are finding more and more borders closed and increasingly restricted access to the protection they need and are entitled to receive according to international refugee law.
That was a spokesperson for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking over the US President Donald Trump's travel ban on 7 Muslim-majority countries. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Well, we continue our discussion now with my expert guest, and still standing by in Mogadishu, Abdi Hakim Ainte, fellow at the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation. In Kampala, political scientist Frederick Galuba Mutebi, and with me in Nairobi, Dr. Mustafa Ali. He's an expert in conflict. Countries have the right to manage their borders, according to the words of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Isn't that what Trump is doing?
Absolutely. Countries have the right to manage and to protect their citizens. That's what they anyway swore to, isn't it? But the manner in which some countries are actually doing this is counterproductive. This is a direct affront to some of the international laws, United Nations and conventions that are in place. Refugees are people who are fleeing from terrorism. They are not terrorists. Now, it's up to the countries, their intelligence agencies and security apparatuses, to ensure that no terrorist slips in to their country together as a refugee. Of course, this has happened. We've seen in Germany that some of those Syrians who went in as refugees actually attacked Berlin and other places. But now you cannot stop 10,000 or throw that blanket condemnation on refugees because you just want to close out 2 or 3 terrorists.
Right. Galuba Mutebi, Donald Trump is simply trying to protect America here.
I think that underlying his decision is certainly his desire to protect the United States. The question we are debating is whether he's going about it the right way. And I think that there is broad agreement that there is a problem with the way he's going about it. Firstly, because he has targeted only a few countries. It's not clear why he has targeted those, because some of the countries where terrorists have been coming from have not been targeted. So there is a legitimate debate as to exactly why these countries and not others. He has said he's doing this over a 90-day period. We don't know what he will do after 90 days. Personally, I prefer to hold my horses until the 90 days have passed so that I can understand fully exactly what it is that he's intending to do. Is this ban going to remain against those countries that he has selected? Is he going to expand the ban? Is he going to lift the ban? We don't know. So this is the basis on which I say that, look, we really don't understand fully where this story is going, and I personally would prefer to be a little more careful and hesitant to sort of come out and outrightly blame or castigate him for the decision he has taken, because underlying it, as the spokesperson of the Secretary General has said, is the right and the obligation of the United States to protect its borders. And I think that all our countries do exactly the same thing, or they should.
Abdi Hakim, your sentiments on that, though, because one would argue that perhaps in this case, Donald Trump may actually be playing into the hands of extremism.
I mean, as with my other colleagues said that, I mean, I totally understand and agree with what the UN Secretary officials said, that the United States has the fundamental responsibility to protect its its border and its security, but it cannot do so at the cost of the most vulnerable people on earth. By which I mean that, you cannot control your border and protect your people while you are suffering and harming other people. And in this case, I think Donald Trump really chooses the latter, which is, you need to protect your border by going the weak people. So I don't think so. That's a civilized way of protecting the United States security. I understand his point of view, but also we need to understand that his predecessor, Obama, was also engaged in a war on terror, in the most stringent and the most withering campaign against the terrorism. But he did so in a manner in which is in accordance with international law, the human rights. Now we're talking about the very fundamental basic human rights that are now at jeopardy and dangerous and now are violated by Donald Trump. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether he has the right to protect and defend the United States security. He has, though. I mean, and everybody does that. But you cannot do so at the price, at the cost of other people.
Right. Well, once again, we'll return to this discussion in just a moment. But first, delegates at the recently concluded African Union summit in Addis Ababa also had reactions to Trump's ban. They called the executive order discriminatory and said that it is a policy that harkens back to the Cold War era. Let's listen in.
As a Libyan citizen, I see this as a complete discrimination against not only Libya, few countries that were named and labeled. And I don't think that the American economy can afford to stand that for very long. Those who know oil economy, they know that America was depending on oil supply from Libya for quite some long time, and they will still need it. And they have interests, if not only direct oil support, there is a lot of oil investments that are going on as well. So once reciprocity takes place on such radical and discriminatory actions, I think they will start feeling the heat back. And I hope that they will wake up and revise those decisions.
If it goes the way it is, we are returning to the Cold War times, and not this time between Russia and America. This time it is between the Middle East and the Arab countries versus America. Because if you single out all these countries and tell them never to travel to your country, you are now isolating yourself and your foreign policy. America needs to change that and allow they are good Muslims. You can't label them. If you go on labeling them, you are creating an enclave of uncertainty which could create more chaos for America.
The sentiments there of delegates at the just concluded African Union summit. Mustafa, the African Union termed the executive order as heralding very turbulent times. First of all, how should Africa respond to this? There are 3 African countries on that ban.
Yeah, first of all, African countries need to understand with the Trump's election and him effectively now putting in place the policy that he said he was going to put in place, we are now moving away from the liberal internationalism to reactionary nationalist populist order. That means that the countries in Europe, United States of America, and now perhaps some Asian countries will want to ensure that they have protectionist policies in their own countries. African countries and leaders have got to be alive to this fact. And Africa is one of those areas that has been depending on aid from some of these countries in Europe, in the United States of America. It will be time to tighten our own belts. But that's not a bad thing per se. Aid has actually been disastrous for Africa. So while the African countries tighten their belts, this is going to be for a short term, and Africans are going to have to learn to build their own countries to be a better place so that Africans do not need to go to the United States of America or do not feel the need to go to Europe.
Right. Guliba Mutebi, you want to give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt here and adopt a wait-and-see attitude. But in the meantime, though, for these 3 countries and for the continent, what do we do about this? How should the continent respond?
I personally don't think that the continent should be jumping around trying to react to this as if it's the end of the world. I mean, how many African countries have been targeted by this? We have over 50 countries. I personally believe that Africans who have legitimate reasons to want to go to the United States will still go there. Those who want to go there illegally will probably not be able to go there. Those who want to go and commit crimes there will not be able to go there. I'm not going to sit here and start lamenting that, you know, aid is going to reduce and we are entering a reactionary phase. I think that Africans, for a very long time, we have lulled ourselves into this comfort of depending on aid and believing that somehow somebody owes us a living. America, Europe, nobody owes us a living. And I think that it's high time we woke up to the reality, as my colleague in the studio said, to do our own thing, build our own countries, and try to depend on ourselves. Of course, aid will continue to flow. It might be reduced, but there is so much aid coming to Africa, and it has been coming to Africa for over 50 years. What have we done with it? I think this attitude that somehow somebody owes us a living and, oh, it's such a bad thing that we are no longer going to receive aid, I personally have something really terrible against it. I think that we need to become more self-reliant. And let me just add one thing.
Briefly.
I personally think that Africa is not going to be that important to Donald Trump, and he's probably going to leave us to our own devices. We are going to receive less lectures about democracy and human rights and what have you. And I think that will give us space to think about the things we need to do for ourselves.
Right. Abdi Hakim, in 2015, though, there were nearly 11,000 Somali refugees who were relocated to the U.S. Now, in the face of all these developments from the United States, though, I guess the question for Somalia will be, how should the continent respond to all this?
I think that's a very good question. I think the continent can respond by really managing the consequence of this ban. And the consequences could be that the terrorist organization or other armed groups could potentially exploit this ban and advance their own narratives. So I think the African continent can manage the consequences through bringing together those African countries and trying to start a new discussion on how African continent can rely on its own security and reclaim in its own security legitimacy. And I think countries with a weak institutions like Somalia should be given a priority and they should be allowed in the discussion, so that those organizations like Al-Shabaab should not advance and exploit this ban in their own advancement. So I think there's a looming opportunity here for the African continent to come forward and now try to devise a new strategy, a new framework under which the continent has the responsibility and the capacity and the capability to protect its security and its border, so that the continent feels safe. And I think the continent has a particular responsibility to really give a room and discussion for Somalia, because Somalia is emerging from an abysmal civil war. So I think it's a really defining moment for the continent to show and demonstrate a leadership, so that the terrorist organizations should not be exploited and advance this ban.
All right, and that's all we have time for this week. But thank you to my guests for their insights. In Mogadishu, Abdi Hakim Ainte, he's a fellow at the Institute of Justice and Reconciliation. In Kampala, political scientist Frederick Galuba Mutebi. And with me in Nairobi, Dr. Mustafa Ali, he's an expert in conflict. Thank you all for joining us in this discussion. And remember, you can join the conversation online through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And do join us again next week for more Talk Africa. Goodbye.